Have you ever caught yourself talking out loud while looking for your glasses, planning your day, or trying to remember why you walked into a room? And then wondered, is something wrong with me? Maybe you've even laughed it off, or felt a little embarrassed if someone else heard you. If that sounds familiar, I want you to relax right now, because what you're about to hear may completely change how you see yourself. For many people over 60, there's a quiet worry in the background. We start to question our memory, our focus, our sharpness. We notice small changes and wonder if they mean something bigger. And when we talk to ourselves, especially out loud, it can feel like one more sign that we're slipping. But psychology tells a very different story. In fact, it tells a surprisingly encouraging one. Talking to yourself is not a sign of confusion. It's not a sign of weakness. And it certainly doesn't mean you're losing your mind. For many seniors, it's actually a sign of a strong, active, and highly capable brain. Today, we're going to talk about why people who often talk to themselves tend to have superior cognitive skills, especially later in life. And as we go through this together, you may start to see that some of the habits you've questioned for years are actually quiet strengths. Think about how your mind works now compared to when you were younger. You've lived through decades of experiences. You've made thousands of decisions, solved countless problems, raised families, built careers, and adapted to more change than younger generations can even imagine. Your brain isn't empty. It's full. And when a brain is full of information, memories, and ideas, it often needs a way to organize all of that activity. For many people, words become that organizing tool. When you speak your thoughts out loud, you're not being careless with your words. You're giving your thinking somewhere to land. Silence can be surprisingly crowded. Thoughts bounce around, interrupt each other, and sometimes disappear before you've had a chance to make sense of them. Speaking gives those thoughts shape. It slows them down just enough for you to hear them, examine them, and decide what matters. This is especially important as we age. A lifetime of knowledge doesn't vanish, but it does become layered. Talking to yourself helps separate one layer from another. It's the mind's way of saying, let's sort this out. And far from being a problem, this is often a sign that your brain is working at a high level and refusing to let things stay messy. You may notice this when you're making a decision. You might say things like, no, that won't work, or wait, that's not right, or even, okay, let's try this instead. What you're doing is thinking out loud, and research shows that this kind of verbal thinking can improve clarity and reduce mental overload. You're not struggling to think. You're thinking so deeply that your mind uses your voice as a tool. Many seniors describe this as feeling calmer once they've said something out loud. That's not a coincidence. Hearing your own voice creates a sense of structure. It turns abstract thoughts into something more concrete. Instead of worries floating around unchecked, they become sentences you can respond to. And that's a powerful skill, especially later in life when mental clarity becomes more valuable than ever. Now let's talk about another moment where this habit shows up clearly. Imagine you're looking for your keys. You know you put them somewhere, but where? As you walk through the house, you might quietly say, keys, keys. Where did I put the keys? To someone watching, it might look unnecessary. But inside your brain, something very useful is happening. When you say the name of an object out loud, you're not just filling the silence. You're activating parts of your brain that help you focus and see more clearly. Psychology has found that speaking an object's name can actually sharpen your visual attention. It helps your brain filter out distractions and zero in on what you're looking for. In simple terms, you're guiding your mind instead of letting it wander. This becomes especially important as we get older because the world is louder and more distracting than ever. Phones buzz, notifications flash, thoughts pull us in different directions. Talking to yourself is one way your brain says, stay with this task. It's a focusing signal. And people who do this often complete tasks more efficiently and with less frustration. You may have noticed that when you talk yourself through a task, you feel more in control. You're less likely to rush, less likely to forget steps. That's because words act like mental anchors. They keep your attention from drifting too far. Instead of feeling scattered, you feel guided. This kind of concentration is not accidental. It reflects a brain that values precision, a brain that wants to do things well, not just quickly. And that's something many seniors excel at, even if they don't give themselves credit for it. Talking to yourself is one of the ways that careful, thoughtful mindset shows up in everyday life. There's also an emotional comfort in hearing your own voice when you're focused. It's familiar, it's steady, and it can make tasks feel less overwhelming. Instead of battling your thoughts silently, you're working with them. That cooperation between mind and voice is a quiet sign of cognitive strength. As we move through life, we often learn what works for us without realizing it. Talking to yourself may be one of those habits you developed naturally because it helped you think more clearly, stay focused, and manage complex situations. It stayed with you because it worked. And what's important to understand is that none of this happens by accident. The brain chooses the tools that serve it best. For some people, that tool is silence. For others, it's speech. Neither is better in general, but for many seniors, speaking thoughts out loud becomes a powerful way to stay mentally organized and engaged. So if you've ever wondered whether talking to yourself means something is wrong, let me gently say this. It often means something is right. It means your mind is active, intentional, and unwilling to drift. It means you're still thinking, still solving, still engaging with the world around you. And as we continue this conversation, we'll keep building on this idea, because organizing thoughts and improving focus are only part of the story. There are deeper, emotional, and memory-related reasons this habit can be such a quiet strength in later life. And once you see those, you may start to appreciate your inner conversations in a whole new way. As we keep talking, there's something important to notice. When you speak to yourself, it's not only about staying focused or organizing thoughts. There's another layer at work, one that often shows up in moments of pressure, disappointment, or self-doubt. This is where talking to yourself becomes much more than a thinking habit. It becomes an emotional skill. Think about a time when something didn't go as planned. Maybe you forgot an appointment, made a small mistake, or felt frustrated with yourself for not moving as quickly as you once did. In those moments, many seniors instinctively say things like, "Come on, you can handle this," or "All right, slow down, it's okay," or even, "Why did I do that? Let's fix it." Those words aren't random. They're doing something very specific inside your brain. When you talk to yourself this way, especially using your own name or saying you create a bit of emotional distance from the problem. Instead of being swallowed by frustration, you step back and look at the situation more calmly. Psychologists call this a form of emotional self-regulation, and it's a skill that many people never fully develop. Yet many seniors practice it naturally without even realizing it. By speaking to yourself as if you were a trusted friend, you soften the emotional impact of stress. You don't deny what you're feeling, but you don't let it take over either. You guide yourself through it. This is one reason many older adults remain steady in situations that might overwhelm someone younger. Life has taught you that panic rarely helps, and your inner voice has learned to step in when emotions run high. This kind of self-talk also prevents small problems from turning into big emotional spirals. Instead of replaying mistakes silently over and over, you address them directly. You name them, you respond to them, and then you move on. That ability to calm yourself doesn't come from ignoring reality. It comes from understanding it and responding with perspective. You may have noticed that when you talk yourself through a stressful moment, your body responds too. Your breathing slows. Your shoulders relax. Your heart rate steadies. That's because your nervous system listens to your voice. Familiar, steady words tell your body that it's safe to settle down. In this way, your voice becomes a tool not just for thinking, but for soothing. This is especially important as we age, because emotional stress has a greater impact on both mental and physical health. Being able to regulate your own emotions without needing constant reassurance from others is a quiet but powerful form of independence. It allows you to face challenges with dignity and resilience. And here's something that often surprises people. Talking to yourself doesn't mean you're lonely. It means you're resourceful. It means you've learned how to be there for yourself when you need it most. That's not weakness. That's wisdom earned over time. Now, there's another reason this habit stays with many seniors, and it has to do with memory. If you've ever said something out loud because you didn't want to forget it, you already understand this on a practical level. You might say, "Doctor at 10 on Thursday," or "keys on the kitchen counter," or "call Susan later." Those words are doing more than reminding you in the moment. They're helping your brain store information more effectively. When you speak something aloud, your brain treats it differently than a silent thought. It creates a stronger memory trace. In simple terms, it leaves a deeper imprint. Hearing your own voice adds another layer of sensory input, and that makes the information more memorable. It's like underlining a sentence instead of just reading it once. This is especially helpful later in life when we're more selective about what we want to remember. Talking to yourself helps your brain mark certain information as important. You're not trying to remember everything. You're choosing what matters, and your voice helps signal that choice. Many seniors who talk to themselves regularly notice that they remember conversations, instructions, and personal commitments quite well. They may forget trivial details, but they rarely forget what they've spoken out loud with intention. That's because the act of speaking turns a thought into an experience, and experiences are easier for the brain to hold on to. You might also notice that repeating something aloud gives you a sense of confidence. You trust your memory more because you've reinforced it. Instead of constantly second-guessing yourself, you feel more certain. That confidence reduces mental strain, which in turn supports better overall cognitive health. What's interesting is that this habit often develops naturally over time. Younger people tend to rely on speed and multitasking. Seniors rely more on depth and meaning. Talking to yourself fits that shift perfectly. It slows things down just enough for your brain to absorb them fully. There's also a sense of control that comes with this. When you say something out loud, you're taking an active role in your own memory. You're not passively hoping you'll remember later. You're engaging with the information right now, and that engagement keeps your mind sharp. As we move through our later years, the goal isn't to think faster. It's to think more clearly, more calmly, and with purpose. Talking to yourself supports all three. It helps you process emotions without overwhelm. It helps you store important information without stress. And it helps you stay connected to your own inner world. Many people don't realize how valuable these skills are because they've been taught to judge themselves harshly for talking out loud. But when you look closely, this habit reflects experience, adaptability, and self-awareness. It shows a mind that knows how to take care of itself. And as this conversation continues, there's one more layer to explore. Because when you combine clear thinking, strong focus, emotional balance, and reliable memory, something powerful emerges. You begin to see that talking to yourself isn't just a habit. It's part of how you've learned to live well, think deeply, and stay mentally strong through every stage of life. As we come closer to the end of this conversation, I want you to take a quiet moment and reflect on everything you've just heard. Not as a list of ideas, not as psychology terms, but as lived experience. Because chances are, much of this already felt familiar. You didn't need research to tell you that talking to yourself helps you think. You've been doing it for years. What matters now is understanding what it truly means. When you talk to yourself, you are not escaping reality. You are engaging with it. You are slowing life down just enough to understand it, respond to it, and move through it with intention. That ability becomes more valuable with age, not less. While the world around you speeds up, demands more, and pulls attention in every direction, your mind has learned how to stay grounded. There is a quiet confidence that comes from this. You may not always move as fast as you once did, but you move with awareness. You don't rush into decisions without thinking them through. You don't let emotions run the show. You pause, you speak, you listen to yourself, and then you act. That is cognitive strength, in its most practical form. Many seniors worry about memory loss, and understandably so. Forgetting names, misplacing items, or needing reminders can feel unsettling. But what often gets overlooked is how well you remember what truly matters. You remember values. You remember lessons. You remember people. And when you speak important things out loud, you give your brain a signal that says, "This matters. Hold on to this." That's not decline. That's discernment. It's also worth saying this clearly. Talking to yourself does not mean you're stuck in the past. It means you're actively processing the present. You are checking in with yourself, adjusting, correcting, encouraging. You're doing internally what many people rely on others to do for them. That independence is a strength that grows with time. You've likely noticed that younger generations often seem overwhelmed, even with all their tools and technology. They multitask constantly, but rarely slow down enough to think things through. Many seniors, on the other hand, have learned the value of reflection. Talking to yourself is one way reflection shows up in daily life. It's a sign that you're not just reacting, you're responding thoughtfully. There's also a deep kindness in healthy self-talk. When you encourage yourself, forgive yourself, or gently correct yourself, you're practicing self-respect. You're treating yourself the way you would treat someone you care about. That kind of inner relationship matters more as we age because it shapes how we experience our days. Instead of criticizing yourself for habits you don't fully understand, you begin to appreciate them. You stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start asking, "How has this helped me?" That shift in perspective alone can lift a great deal of unnecessary worry. And here's something I want you to truly take in. The goal of aging well is not to stay exactly the same. It's to adapt wisely. Your brain has adapted by finding ways to stay clear, focused, emotionally balanced, and connected. Talking to yourself is one of those adaptations. It's not random. It's not meaningless. It's functional, protective, and deeply human. So the next time you hear your own voice guiding you through a task, solving a problem, or calming you down, don't silence it out of embarrassment. Listen to it. That voice carries experience. It carries resilience. It carries decades of learning. If this resonates with you, I'd love to hear from you. Have you talked to yourself for years? Did you ever worry about it? Or did you always feel on some level that it helped you? Share your thoughts or experiences in the comments. You never know who might feel comforted by reading them. And if you found value in this conversation, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Strong Elderly Life. This channel is here to remind you that growing older does not mean growing weaker, less capable, or less important. It means carrying wisdom that deserves to be understood and respected. We'll continue to explore topics like mental clarity, emotional strength, independence, and well-being in ways that are honest, research-based, and encouraging. Because life after 60 isn't about fading into the background. It's about living with depth, awareness, and confidence. Thank you for spending this time with me today. Be gentle with yourself. Trust your mind. And remember, the conversations you have with yourself may be some of the most important ones you'll ever have. Here's to living your best life at every age.